Over the enemy, you have to know him, the enemy. So, okay. But you know where I was this summer? You will not believe me. I was with my son on educational trip to know the enemy in Macau. And I wasn't ripped off. I won $700-800. I don't know how, some miracle or what, but I won money there actually. So maybe I'm in the wrong profession. I should put there. Okay. I haven't yet seen, it starts tomorrow, I think. No, it opens, sorry. Ridley Scott, Napoleon, no? I am tempted to write another review before seeing the movie, announcing why it's not worth seeing, and so on, because a couple of friends who saw it on some previews for critics told me that the basic idea is so disgustingly primitive. Is it already? So
no, it's not already.
Yeah.
This is the talk before the talk.
Yeah. Dialectic, you know. Yeah. Then if I talk long enough, we can skip the talk. No, it's that the basic premise is a kind of a pseudo-Freudian one, or even a version of Lacan. There is no sexual relationship, that Napoleon was never sure, did he really conquer his wife, Josephine? So, as a supplement, he conquered half of Europe in order to obfuscate this fact that he cannot even, my God, I became like Goebbels, burn the movie when I hear that, you know, it's just breathtaking. Sorry? Lemon. But still, I like a little bit Napoleon, because I read now from a Russian historian a good report that when Napoleon, he was behind his time, he thought, I captured Moscow, it's the end, no, of Russia. But, okay, many people left, but a couple of hundreds of thousands remain in Moscow for those 2-3 months after French occupation. And nonetheless, you know, something good remained. The French introduced their Code Napoleon, the law, which was much more egalitarian, at least compared with the old, you know. And nonetheless, I am no big fan of Napoleon, if for no other thing, because of what he did in Haiti. Don't forget that. Totally opposite to Jacobins, no? Nonetheless, the problem was not that he really wanted to conquer Europe. The problem was that he was nonetheless a successor to revolution, and simply European big powers, others, didn't want to accept it. He was more, okay, honest, hoping for peace, and especially, as I was boring them, the ladies already before, don't trust Wellington, who is now celebrated as, listen, after Napoleonic Wars, you know, there were, how do you pronounce them, those who were smashing machines, Luddites and Chartists, and these were true uprisings, and Wellington was the bad guy who militarily squashed this killing at least hundreds, you know, because at that point counting was almost as unreliable as today in the Gaza war. Because, no, but there are some beautiful paradoxes there. The first is that, you know, it's not that the, how are they called, the Gaza side is elevating the numbers. No, Israel claims it's more than 20,000 that we killed. So Israel gives higher numbers, but you know why? Because they claim that Hamas covers up, doesn't say about how many of their soldiers are killed. So paradoxically, Hamas numbers are lower. On the other hand, it's so sad, and this shows, I'm sorry, apology, I'm the usual European racist, no? Usually I thought nonetheless, Israel more European, that you can trust their data more. No, they are, as I told to an Arab friend, and he laughed, that Israel IDF informations they're lying more than Arabs. Sorry for the obscenity. Because you remember those burned corpses in the kibbutz. First, they claimed decapitated children. Then IDF officially withdrew this. But Biden wasn't informed. You followed the scandal. And he said it. I saw it, the pictures. Then, second point. You remember they did show some burned bodies, claimed this is what Hamas did. Now, a couple of days ago, a representative of IDF admitted that these are really Hamas bodies burned by Israeli army. I mean, whom can you trust? No, whatever I say. Okay, you are the boss.
Yeah, I'm just quickly writing my intro. Is everybody in? We're still checking a couple of people in, and we've still got 3 minutes, in fact.
Okay, then I will tell you quickly another story to fill in the time, how I like to get into trouble. Two things. First, I'm a little bit sad to be here today, but I'm getting paranoid because I wanted to use these 2 days to visit Assange, who is now half forgotten, but the horror goes on. He is still 23 hours per day totally alone, 1 hour walking around with the guard. If you visit him, it's still through the glass only. And they made it so difficult to visit him. Now, you have to announce it 2-3 weeks ago, and then not on a day, they give you a day and the time. And I'm not megalomaniac. I'm not saying that I am under control, but probably his wife of Assange, with whom I was in contact, is under control. So imagine what date I was given. Now, today at 2 p.m. I think this is a little bit too much because then I tried desperately to ask her to contact the prison. They said, no. And then she said, but there are no other visitors, you know. It's not that there is a full line or whatever. Another thing where I defend, 2 minutes, then we begin. Did you, among the troubles I got into, I love this one. Maybe you followed it. I said something of which I am proud. Sorry, there are some Hindus here, but I'm dirty in all directions. You know, in a reaction when I was asked about Oppenheimer, the movie, at one point, maybe you heard this trouble, because there were friends from India told me hundreds of emails. They told me, one of them literally, for next couple of months, if you plan to, don't visit India. Because I said something of which I'm proud. I think I was correct. You remember when Oppenheimer was shown, first, Indians protested that while he, Oppenheimer, is fucking Florence Pugh, she asked him, or the other way around, to read from Bhagavad Gita. And India said, how can you do this? Dirty sex and our most noble book. And I, in 2-3 podcasts, I said what I think, that I agree with Indians. This combination is horrible, but the other way around. There is a beautiful sex, and they spoil it by one of the most obscene, dirty books imaginable. And then I said, you know, all totalitarians, I know about Heinrich Himmler, I know about, in Brazil, military rule, police. They loved Bhagavad Gita. You know, this idea, don't identify with your act at a distance. This is what the great ethical thinker, and I'm not joking, he was really bothered by these problems, Heinrich Himmler, said, we Nazis, in our duty, we have to do horrible things, kill Jewish children, blah, blah, blah. How to do it without ourselves becoming dirty? His answer was Bhagavad Gita. Sorry? Zen Buddhism is also, but Himmler made the choice. No, Buddhism was maybe, because, you know, I'm not so much against Buddhism. Nonetheless, I think, and many of my Indian friends agree, that the greatest spiritual tragedy of India was when around zero, our count, no? After 400 years, Buddhism lost and Hinduism made a comeback. At least you can say about Buddhism that it was against castes, which our great hero, not mine, Gandhi, never. He did, again to annoy you, he did a typically fascist move. He said each caste is a child of God, its own proper level, but you should remain at your post. Also in South Africa, he fought white racism, but friends from India sent me fragments, not on behalf of total equality. He accepted the basic division white-black. He just said, us Indians, you should count us as white. So don't, sorry, now.
Let me jump in here and
brutal
try.
Feminine intrusion.
Yeah, exactly. And try, in fact, but I'm doing a non-introduction anyway, so that probably fits. So welcome, everybody. So good to see so many of you to this Birkbeck Institute for the Humanities event, our regular masterclasses with Slavoj Zizek. And I'm not going to do a long introduction, not least because it often leads to excursus that takes him away from the script and so on. And also mainly because you all know who he is. And online, you know, I look in on X or whatever, you get kind of about a tweet a minute sort of pertaining to Slavoj and his work. And so you can get that really reflected impression of him through social networks. His latest book, though, came out last month, Freedom, A Disease Without Cure. And I also noticed, I mean, you're extremely busy right now. I see like Novara podcasts and Philosophical Salon, and I wondered maybe this is evidence of history sort of moving through the negative, because much of that came off the back of a...
So I'm negative, I'm a bad guy, no?
No,
but I'm maybe when I lose with my feet, my feet will fertilize some progress, maybe.
Yeah, no, but that's what I thought was like, it came off the back of this sort of wounding experience in Germany.
Yes,
the
I will mention it,
book there, which I'm sure will come up, and that sort of
but
propelled
not too much.
a
Please,
new set of thoughts. So Slavoj Zizek is the International Director of Birkbeck Institute for the Humanities and has a long association with us, going back, I think, to at least the Idea of Communism conference, which was in 2009, maybe. Was
at that point, I think I was already...
You were already involved.
Somehow involved
so
here,
even longer. So today's session, the two sessions, today and tomorrow, are titled Why Radical Politics Needs Philosophy. And the nominal name for today's class is Interpretation as a Political Act. And just a word about format. Slavoj will speak, I don't know, maybe an hour, maybe a little more. He's got quite a pile there, but also lots of scratchings out. After he's completed his talk, then we'll open it up to questions and answers. We'll have a roving mic, and I hope people get to contribute, but I should just hand it over to you. Thank you.
Please, I will try to give already today some Q&A time, because tomorrow I have immediately after at 4 another very traumatic visit. My friend, although we are not on the same wavelength, Hanif Kureishi, you know, and he learned now the very bad news, no? He is totally cannot move from neck down, and it's till the end of his life, no? In vegetative state. It's sad. Okay, let's begin. Let's go on. The first thing that does strike me in today's polemics about Israel, Hamas, Gaza war is an anti-Semitic context in many of those who praise Israel. In a letter defending Israel from my critical remarks, a Slovene Catholic author concludes that the main problem of Israel, quote, I just translated it from Slovene, is neither Hamas nor the king of the north, as the Bible calls the next great aggressor on Israel, Russia, Iran, Turkey. It is Israel's own persistence in sin, its own fall from God, since Israel is today maybe the most atheist country in the world. So I found this quite breathtaking. Good luck with such defenders. Again, that you kindly mentioned that Frankfurt Book Fair speech, you know, I was just shocked there because they claimed by mentioning just Palestinians, I went as far as possible in moderation. If you want to read it, it's available on the web. All the names are, I quote, are Jewish names, and even some suspicious Jewish names. For example, I positively quote, you know whom? Moshe Dayan, who, when in 55-6, also on a smaller scale, the same thing as today, a group from Gaza invaded southern Israel and killed a guy. He said, don't blame them. We should see the situation. We took their land and so on and so on. My God, the founding fathers of Israel, it's so refreshing, I'm not kidding, to read them today, how much more honest they were. None of this, it says in the Bible, blah, blah, blah. No, they admitted it's a tragic conflict. In no way they assumed that they are right. So, and then I spoke with a Jewish friend in Frankfurt, and he told me, and this is my answer to those who claim, why are you so soft towards Israel and so on? Well, first, I must tell you something, I don't know if you know, I do sincerely condemn the Hamas attack. Not, you know why? Because I didn't know people who were killed there, but I know people who know them. They were absolutely the most progressive Israeli Jews. They were all the time in contact with Gaza, bringing them doctors, medicine, and so on and so on. So the lesson was clear, but again, the Jewish friend told me that's what annoys Zionist hardliners. You know, if I just say, long live Hamas, yeah, another idiot. But because I focused on precise details and so on, you know. Okay, let's not lose time and let's go on. Because I was also interrupted there in Germany when I quoted Reinhard Heydrich, the father of Holocaust, and I quoted him when he mentions something that is today unmentionable, that already Heydrich was totally in favor of the basic Zionist idea of Jews reoccupying Palestine. Because at that point, when he wrote what I will read you now, in 1935, the Nazis didn't yet decide on Holocaust. They played with, the idea was just get the Jews out of Europe. One idea was, they didn't copy it from you, maybe your Suella, my favorite feminine, this is feminism in politics, she had got this idea of Rwanda. Well, the Nazis didn't have Rwanda, but Uganda, no? That was the idea, then it was Madagascar. And then here is what, again, Heydrich, the father of Holocaust, wrote in 1935, we must separate the Jews into two categories, the Zionists and the partisans of assimilation. The Zionists profess a strict racial concept, and through emigration to Palestine, they help to build their own Jewish state. Our good wishes and our official goodwill go with them. Now you will say this is just a statement, formal. No, in the late 30s, oh my God, I like to discover dirty details. In the late 30s, when Jews were pushed out of Germany, you know, if you proclaimed that you want to go to Palestine, money, because for ordinary Jews who wanted to go to the West, you have to leave your property in Germany. But if you signed that you go to Palestine, then you were allowed to use your property, but to spend it in Germany on arms and on agricultural machines. So that's the irony. Many of the arms that Jews used to become independent were, because of this, were the Nazi arms. So I will return later, don't be afraid, to my unconditional rejection of every form of anti-Semitism, because, you know, now the situation is crazy. Check it up. A month ago in Die Zeit, the great center German weekly, I published an interview, not published, it was only on their website, whose title it was. They, of course, took out a phrase of me to make it more, Hamas soll vernichtet sein. Hamas had to be annihilated. And the reaction was, no, I'm just saying this. In reality, I secretly support Hamas. So, you know, like, if you say A, you mean A. If you say the opposite, it's the hidden way to say A. So, why am I mentioning this? Now comes the dark part. I will show you, and I cannot emphasize how I'm now in a such desperate move that I am ready to criticize everybody. Like, you know, some liberals who, left liberals who have a sympathy for even Hamas, they claim it's nonetheless a guerrilla movement and so on. Well, the first thing to note is that it's more or less, so my friends are telling me, and I don't take seriously marginal media, although in these times I don't know why one should take seriously the big media. You know how Hamas grew, no? It was part of the Jewish strategy. Hamas was still, 96, a very marginal group. But then Israel decided that the only way to prevent, or the way to prevent, two-state solution was to split the Palestinians. And they made the same mistake as Americans in Afghanistan. Americans also, I mean, name me one of today's terrorists from that era who wasn't at some point CIA agent, you know. Osama bin Laden was, when he fought against the Russians, he was. So what I'm saying is that they even funded with money Hamas. The idea was just, let's keep the Palestinians split. So again, second thing, please, I'm trying to provoke you. I don't have a firm position. I just think today it's the time to say everything. Not lies, of course, but everything we know. For example, you know, we somehow think if Gaza somehow returns to normality, that it will be some kind of a democratic republic and so on. Who knows? You know, I'm getting tired of this liberal idea. We should distinguish between Hamas and the mass of ordinary Palestinians. It's not as simple as that. Hamas probably still has a certain heroic status and so on. And to go to the end, I will go more into this tomorrow. Generally, now I will shock you, I hope. I think that there are definitely conditions, not only in the Western countries, where democracy as we know it doesn't work, to put it very simply. And I will give you an example. Are you, sorry, you, the black guy, where are you from? sorry for this Nazi question. Where are you from? No. You have nothing to do with Rwanda. No, I'm sorry then. I'm sorry. Because I have a couple of friends there who told me in a very embittered way that I forgot his name, Kagame or what? Kagame, I don't know how you accentuate it. This is a soft dictator, soft, but nonetheless dictator, but it worked. He brought peace in a slightly oppressive way between Hutus, Tutsis, and the situation is stable, economy is growing, and he told me if you were to introduce there directly a Western type multi-party democracy, it would for sure meant, again, parties based on ethnic divisions, and you are there. And so now that you will not accuse me of playing the Western racist card, like, yeah, that's for Africa. No, I seriously think, I debated this with my friend from the United States. If this madman in United States, now we live in a very strange political era. You in the UK, did you notice that you have now two big parties? One, center-right conservative party called Labour Party, and then one smaller on the fringes called, which you don't know even what it is, called Conservative Party, And your only hope, it is that the moderate conservatives will take over. In United States, the way things are going now, with this exploding advocacy of illegitimate violence, like Trump is raising his voice all the time in the sense of, if I don't win, it's sure-proof election, blah, 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 we will go to the streets and so on. A friend of mine told me, I have many strange connections. I know people who know people who know people who at the end are in. For example, a friend of a friend who has links to White House told me something that we all know, but it's good to learn that it's true. Why did Biden adopt this strong pro-Israeli stance? For two reasons. First, his bad advisors probably told him to win you need Jewish money. Nothing against Jews, but against his vulgar advisors, because it was even a bad advice. Now Biden is losing black votes and so on. But second thing, which is the saddest, Biden, it's really tragic. Where are the United States? Even Trump, you remember 6 years ago or when for, Trump was at least moderately funny, lively. Now Trump is slowly getting like Biden, like stupid, forgets things, repeats himself, and so on. Even the aspect to love in Trump is disappearing. I think that, and this would be, I think, the worst revenge on United States, that maybe, and I learned from other friends of friends of friends, a father of one of my friends has a high position in US Army. The US Army is seriously preparing to guarantee peace, intervene in social life if Trump wins. They count on disorder, So I correct my previous stance. Yes, Army is needed to guarantee public peace in third world countries like the United States. No, this is not a joke, unfortunately. This is not a joke. And I don't have any inhibitions here. Look at, there is what I don't believe. What traditional Marxists in their eternal search for some true emancipatory subject are looking for some specific group, social group position, which gives you a privileged access to emancipatory politics, like what Marx called proletarian position. But Mao still kept to this. Just for him, it was not workers, it was peasants, farmers, which is why in Cultural Revolution they were sending students to, as if being a poor farmer has some special privilege. I don't think it has today. And so my ex-friend Alain Badiou think that illegal immigrants are this revolutionary subject, because as he once told me, they have nothing to lose but their chains. They are in this position. He calls them immigrant proletarians or homeless proletarians. Well, again, sorry if I offend some of you, but I don't think this is the case. They came without material chains. They have nothing. But they have definitely ideological chains, their religion and so on, to which maybe they stick even more when you don't have any material social status. So, yeah, you know, it is for me the sad case. You remember, when did it happen? Now it's already 15, 20 years ago, the Arab Spring and before. For a brief moment, under the pressure of popular protests, Algeria allowed so-called free elections. You know what happened? Muslim fundamentalists took over, and then that's the cruel irony. The very middle-class educated circles, which put pressure on the military to allow free elections, then grudgingly accepted new military takeover to get rid of the fundamentalists. Friends, correct me if some of you are here, friends from Egypt told me the same. You remember, millions of the street, let's get rid of Mubarak, free elections, then not the agents of the, on that, which square is there, Tahrir or whatever, not they were mostly young, almost probably middle-class educated people. Then the silent Islamic majority took over, Muslim Brotherhood, and it was even worse. So this was for me the saddest moment when these original protesters themselves grudgingly approved a new military takeover. And now they got what they deserved. Sorry, an obscenity because of different meaning in our language. Now they have a leader appropriately called Sisi, no? I think. So, you know, you see, one should be here totally without taboos. My God, the situation is so shitty. I remember, do you remember, was it here or in the other room at the last summer school? Where do we have here the final debate? Yeah. The other room, yes. You remember sitting somewhere there were two ANC ladies, African National Congress. I almost cried. You remember, if some of you were here, I asked one of them, I read this bullshit about, you know, South Africa, failed state. Tell me, what should I answer those liberals who are deeply for democracy for blacks, just they are not really mature for it and so on. And she told me something, maybe you remember, which made me so sad. She told me that more and more what is growing in South Africa among the poor black majority is nostalgia for apartheid. You remember, she said that, and it was understandable why, because under apartheid, the standard of living was of the black majority, the same as now, if not a tiny little bit higher, plus there was, because it was a police state, social order. Now we have an extreme amount of violence and so on. South Africa is the capital of rapes. They even have, I have friends in Egypt, you know, I have my own private KGB to get information. So it's horrible. They even, I mention here this often, it depresses me. They even invented their own version of rape. They have a term for it. Well, while raping a woman, you either strangle her or cut her with the knife. They have a specific term for this. So what I'm saying, am I saying blacks are not ripe for democracy? No, I'm just saying, first, don't underestimate the fear and distrust of ordinary people. I hate leftists who live for a big event and simply ignore the fears of ordinary people. Second thing, the Zimbabwe explanation is too simple. It leads to catastrophe, which is blame the white people because they still control. But nonetheless, there is an element of truth in it. You have to change the class structure because the moment the dilemma is the existing power, which is extremely corrupted, or the previous white colonizers, which care only for their own small safe island, they are lost. So again, if you excuse me, I will now go and I will explain why don't accuse me of anti-Semitism. What interests me is how something like this is possible at all. I will show you, please have the patience to see it, something really, really depressive. This is how Heydrich would have spoken today. You know what is, it's like, where is, are you, how does one, Eli, how does one pronounce? Elia, yeah. Okay, it's without A at the end, Eli Academy. It's elite in suburbs of Jerusalem, elite military academy. And don't tell me that they are marginal. You will see in the scene sitting Netanyahu, Smotrich was there, and sorry, now it's time for me to erase myself from the picture. But it's worth seeing. Yeah. Let's take everything out. If possible, and maybe I move this here, because this is worth seeing. I checked that, people checked it with my friends in Israel. This is authentic. Please put it loud or...
בגלל ביטול העבודות החוקית, אז נוצרו מגרעות עכשיו, כי אין אחריות על הנכס הזה. בעזרת השם זה יחזור. הם ירצו עבוד, להיות עבדים שלנו.
זהו הרב אליעזר קשתיאל, ראש ישיבת בני דוד בעלי.
הכי טוב להיות עבד של יהודים. הם שמחים להיות עבדים, רוצים להיות עבדים.
הישיבה הזו מיועדת לבוגרי המכינה הקדם צבאית, המוכרת והיוקרתית בציונות הדתית. רבים מהם מגיעים אליה לאחר שהם מסיימים שירות צבאי.
במקום שאולי סתם מסתובב ברחובות, ועושה שטויות ואלימות ומזיק אחד לשני. עכשיו החיים שלו מתחילים להתנהל.
לפי הרב קשתיאל, האדונים הם היהודים, העבדים הם הערבים, החלוקה לא מקרית, זה עניין ביולוגי, בעיות גנטיות.
יש מסביבנו עמים כאלה, בעיות גנטיות. תשאל ערבי פשוט, איפה אתה רוצה להיות? הוא רוצה להיות תחת הכיבוש. למה? כי הם לא, זה בעיה גנטית, הם לא יודעים לנהל מדינה, הם לא יודעים לעשות כלום. תראה איך הם נראים.
והנה התורה כולה, תורת הגזע.
בוודאי שיש גזענות, מה אנחנו לא יודעים שיש גזעים שונים בעולם, מה זה סוד זה, מה זה לא נכון, זה נכון, מה לעשות.
בעוד יומיים עם ישראל יציין את יום השואה, בין היתר את החלוקה של הנאצים לגזעים, עליונים ונחותים, והנה בגרסה העברית.
כן, אנחנו גזענים, אנחנו מאמינים בגזענות. יש גזעים בעולם, ויש תכונות גנטיות של עמים, וזה דורש מאיתנו לחשוב איך לעזור להם. יש הבדלים בין גזעים, וזה בדיוק סיבה שהיא תוצרה. אני רואה שאני מגיע להישגים הרבה יותר מרשימים ממנו.
ראש מוסדות בני דוד, הרב אלי סדן, עומד מאחורי הליהוק של הרב רפי פרץ לראש איחוד מפלגות הימין. כעת המועמד המוביל לתפקיד שר החינוך. רק הרב פרץ הורשה לשאת דברים בפני תלמידי המכינה לפני הבחירות. נתניהו ובנט סורבו. רבני בני דוד מהווים את התשתית הדתית, הערכית והחינוכית של מי שמיועד להוביל את מערכת החינוך שלנו. כיצד הם רואים את השואה?
השואה באמת זה לא שלבות היהודים, זאת לא השואה. כל התירוצים האלה כמו זה אידיאולוגי או זה שיטתי או כל זה לא נפלות. וכיוון שזה היה דבר מתוך אידיאולוגיה, במידה מסוימת זה יותר מוסרי מאשר סתם שאנשים רוצחים. הומניזם, כל התרבות החילונית שאנחנו מאמינים לאדם, זה השואה. השואה באמת זה להיות פלורליסט, זה להאמין ואני מאמין באדם. זה נקרא שואה.
זהו הרב גיורא רדלר, וזו ההגדרה שלו לשואה.
הקדוש ברוך הוא כבר הרבה שנים צועק שנגמרה הגולה, אבל אנשים לא מקשיבים לו, וזאת המחלה שלהם שאותה צריך לרפא על ידי השואה.
שימו לב לשיעור המדהים הזה, תחת הכותרת היחס לשואה, כך הוא מחנך את תלמידיו על הנאצים ועל היטלר.
ההיגיון של הגרמנים הוא נכון יחסית לעצמם. זאת אומרת, שקבוצה מסוימת באוכלוסייה היא זרע הפורענות לכל האנושות, בגללה כל האנושות תלך לאבדון, הם מלאים לאנושות, ולכן צריך להשמיד אותם. האידיאולוגיה הזאת נשמעת לך לא הגיונית? זה רעה מאוד.
זה לא נשמע מוסרי.
משה רבינו, הכי רשע כמו היטלר.
לא, למה לא?
יש דבר אחד רע בעולם, זה לא צבוע. משנה לך אם הורגים אותך עכשיו מסכין, או כמו שהרגו את הגז, או שהורגים אותך את הגז, זה נראה לך.
התלמידים נדהמים, מנסים לסתור את הרע, והוא ממשיך בשלו.
בוא נתחיל מהשאלה אם היטלר צודק או לא. לא. הוא האדם הכי צודק שיש. ודאי שהוא צודק כל מילה שהוא אומר. באידיאולוגיה שלו הוא צודק. יש עולם גברי שנלחם, שעניינו כבוד, שעניינו החוות לוחמים. יש את העולם הנשי, הרכרוכי, המוסרי, לתת הלחי השנייה. ואנחנו חושבים שהיהודים הם אלה שנושאים את המורשת הזאת, מנסים במילים שלנו לקלקל את כל האנושות, ולכן הם האויב האמיתי. עכשיו, הוא צודק ב100%, חוץ משהו בצד הלא נכון.
האמירות האלה חוזרות על עצמן שוב ושוב בשיעורי בני דוד לאורך השנים. לא פליטת פה, אלא אג'נדה סדורה.
ראשי הבית היהודי כהנא, סדן ופרץ, עושים שימוש במכינות הקדם צבאיות כדי להפנים בחניכים ערכים משיחיים. החומרה של הדבר נובעת מכך שמשרד החינוך, שאמור להיות אחראי על התכנים, נמצא בידיים שלהם.
ייתכן, ובקרוב מי שמזוהה עם התפיסות של המכינה והישיבה הזאת, יהיה אחראי על חינוך תלמידי ישראל.
It is depressing, at least, but I will stay there. Sorry, I didn't yet. Now, you know what's my problem here? Of course, this is a minority view. But, you know, I ask myself, as the commentator claims there, is nonetheless this minority view not something that today, to some extent, not totally, determines the actual politics of the state of Israel, which is why, to make it clear, I think that now I will say something, get ready for real obscenity. I don't know if it already appeared. This is why, sorry, just looking for it. Yes, this is why I think that the greatest thing that was happening in Israel till a couple of months ago, the big protests against this guys taking over, and that's why, far from being anti-Semitic, I have great hope in still what remains of the democratic awareness of the Jews, that these hardliners, these guys, fit so perfectly the goals of Hamas. Eva Ilus attacked me in a text, was it published here in Guardian? I know it was in Süddeutsche Zeitung in Germany and in Haaretz. And we live in, so that you will not say that I'm in any sense anti-Semitic, let me tell you something. My reply to her should appear tomorrow, one of these days, in Haaretz. In Israel, you can publish it. In Germany, no. Here also not. That's why I publish in all those marginal philosophical salon and so on. I'm now out of the public media. So now I will do something really obscene, but it's the truth, I claim. It's along the lines, it's also in my last text, if you read it. You remember the movie, which I quite like, directed by Polanski, based on Robert Harris' The Ghost, where Ewan McGregor plays a ghostwriter who is hired to write the autobiography as a ghostwriter of a former prime minister modeled on Tony Blair. And you know what is the final discovery for which he is killed at the end? That Tony Blair was from the beginning set up as by CIA. And CIA was intelligent enough to say, we need formally a leftist guy, but who will perfectly follow American politics. And in some review, they said, of course, this wasn't true. So, if it were true, it would certainly explain pretty much everything about the recent history of Great Britain. So, following the same line, let's imagine, trigger warning, real obscenity, this, not sexual. Let's imagine a phone conversation between some mega hardliners like Smotrich or Ben-Gvir in Israeli government and Hamas. Let's imagine in those famous, maybe they will discover them, tunnels in Gaza, a phone rings and says, here I am, some hardline Israeli politician. Hi, do you remember how we discreetly supported you against PLO? Now you owe us a favor. Why don't you attack and slaughter some Jews close to Gaza? They are, in any case, Arab friends, peaceniks. We don't need them. Because we have here two problems. Civil protest against us and ethnic cleansing of the West Bank, they are going too slowly. The world will be shocked at your brutality, and we will be able to play a victim again, getting national unity and escalate ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. Hamas answers, okay, but we need a counter favor. In revenge for our slaughter, promise that you will bomb civilians in Gaza, killing thousands, especially children. This will give us a boost to anti-Semitism all around the world, which is our true goal. The Israeli side answers, yes, that's good. We would like to have a little bit more of anti-Semitism so that then we can play the role of a victim again, which legitimizes us to do what we want. And then I don't know, in my crazy imagination, which of you repeats the last line, a little bit changed from Casablanca. Well, I hope this is the beginning of a beautiful, not friendship, but hatred, you know. Of course, to avoid every misunderstanding, of course, this did not happen. I'm not obscene. I genuinely believe that Israelis were shocked by what happened. You know who is my hero here? That's why I don't buy that line of even Roger Waters. Read a public letter that Gideon Levy, whom I admire in Israel, wrote to Roger Waters, who basically says, we don't know for sure what happened in the first Hamas attack. And Gideon Levy told him, I knew the people there. This is a wonderful detail. Gideon Levy said, you know, they were progressive young people. You know what I found in one of their closets? Your own Pink Floyd recordings, you know. Look for them in Gaza and so on, you know. So what I want to say is that that's the tragedy. It's crazy imagination, but this is the logic. Whenever I lose attacks me that I claim that Israel and Palestine and Gaza are the same, playing tango, dancing. No, they are not. And also, I'm not saying that even the hardline Zionists and Hamas are the same. I'm just saying that they are playing together a certain game where the goal is to quote John Lennon, although in my universe, Imagine is one of the nastiest, stupid songs, the most, but you know, give peace a chance. That was the goal of the Hamas attack, to kill the very hope of peace. And that's what I think also hardliners there want. So let's go on. What is happening today is something extremely sad, I think. It is, and we should always be extremely suspicious about it. When it is extreme rightists who are, as a rule, anti-Semitic, like Marine Le Pen in France or AfD in Germany, now they totally support Israel. this is what makes me suspicious. And it was even a scandal, I think, in Israel. Some liberals finally got it. Remember this name. I'm against that penalty after people like that will be killed, to be obscene. Did I pronounce the name correctly? I'm not sure. John Hagee, I think. Hagee. An American radical conservative Baptist Christian who supports Israel. But then if you read the context I did of how he supports Israel, it is part of divine plan. First, Holocaust, the same as that guy said, to get Jews there. Then in Armageddon, Jews will be killed, and so on and so on. It's a nightmarish vision. And finally, some sound voices in Israel said, are we crazy? We are now inviting to commemorate whatever the slaughter there, we are inviting people like this. Okay, I don't want to lose time. Look at my last text in Philosophical Salon. I don't want to lose time by claiming how this hardline orientation was from the very beginning a deplorable part of the Zionist movement. The proof. I took this from a recent article by Sheila Ben Habib, the Habermasian lady, that on December 2nd, 1948, progressive Jews, among them Albert Einstein, Hannah Arendt, and so on, published a letter in New York Times where they write, among the most disturbing political phenomena of our times is the emergence in the newly created state of Israel of the Freedom Party, a political party closely akin in its organization, methods, political philosophy, and social appeal to the fascist parties, and so on, and so on, and so on. Not to lose time, just to, who is here my true object of hatred? Not even the Zionists. My God, you know, that's why I was so attacked in Frankfurt. Yes, we should use context. I was attacked for there twice interrupted by a very strange person. My God, Germans are really doing everything to give a boost to anti-Semitism, if you ask me. Because the way they make people guilty, attack them for just mentioning Palestine, it's as if they are provoking it. I was attacked for just mentioning the context and to make it clear that I don't support Hamas. I mentioned the example of Nazis. I said to mention dozens, hundreds maybe, of books are written about how Hitler took power. This doesn't relativize it in any way. No, I'm a Kantian here. You are always responsible for your act. You should never say, oh, I was the victim of circumstances. No, nobody is totally a victim of circumstances. But of course, to understand Hitler, which doesn't mean relativize. I hate that common wisdom. To understand means to forgive. You know, it's almost as stupid as that even more famous saying, which I really hate, wisdom, pacifist wisdom. Enemy is someone whose story you were not ready to hear. Sorry, Hitler was our enemy because we were not ready to hear his story. I read Mein Kampf, and if anything, he was more of an enemy. But what I'm saying is to understand how Nazis came to power, you have to know the humiliation of Versailles Peace, the tragedy of economic crisis in the 20s, and so on and so on. You know who is here? I'm repeating myself. I think I already mentioned this here. You know who is, for me, the real friend, the real genius here, although in theory he was not? Friedrich Engels, the other man. He wrote This was a stroke of a genius. In 1882, 30 years before, he said a new big European war is slowly preparing, getting ready, and he then write something which I reacted almost, in Tom and Jerry cartoons when the cats and your eyes jump out, and he says, Engels, he writes, it will probably involve around 10 million deaths. You know what's the official number today of those dead in the First World War? 9,800,000. Then he said it will be East and West, Russia and France and Great Britain against Germany and Austria. And he said probably Germany will lose and maybe there will be a revolution in Russia, not bad. And then comes a true stroke of a genius, where Engels says if Germany will lose, a decade or two later, there will be another war of revenge. So don't say that Marxists are necessarily stupid idealists, Sometimes, not often, I admit, but sometimes they no. So, okay, so you know what? Because now the situation is crazy in Germany, as I already told you. First, there was, after my speech, an attack on me in Israel, but then, not just in relatively progressive newspapers, like Haaretz, there was a much more objective text, okay, manipulating me a little bit, comparing me to Judith Butler. And I was all of a sudden a good guy, Judith Butler, a bad guy. Now, I must tell you something that I find unfair here. I often, and also in her stance towards Hamas, I disagree with Judith. But even Eva Illouz falls into a trap. She refers to her as an intellectual, under quotation marks. Sorry. With all my disagreements with Judy, she is an intellectual. And there, to bring things to madness, in Germany, you will find the reference in this, look at Philosophical Salon. There was recently a text published, again, I had that reaction of Tom and Jerry, where the title tells it all, Deconstructing the State of Israel. The text looks at her early Judith works like Gender Trouble and claims that when she writes about deconstructing fixed gender identities, from the beginning already, the true goal was to deconstruct, that is to say, destroy Israel. I mean, that's where we are. So, you know what is happening here? I think it's horrible. The Germans are doing something extremely hypocritical here. They, of course, and they are quite justified about it, they still are haunted by the guilt of Holocaust. And what they are really doing, as a guy told me, the Germans are hypocrites. They say one thing publicly, but privately they're a little bit more open. I then spoke with one of those Germans who attacked me and asked him, but are you aware what is going on now? And he said, yes, but we did something so horrible to the Jewish people that as a payment for it, we have to support Israel now even where it is wrong. I found this horrible. So you try to pay for your ex-crime by supporting your ex-enemy, where he also is doing, I admit it, a smaller crime, but nonetheless a crime. Are they aware that in this way they are directly contributing to anti-Semitism? That's what really worries me, that both sides will come out of this war in such a terrible state, and since I know more Jews than Palestinians, although I have some very good friends like that punker Palestinian Tamer Nafar, I'm in contact with him now, who lives in Lodz, the Israeli-Palestinian suburb of Tel Aviv, that, you know, as Eva Illouz says in her text, and I agree with her, that what ordinary people see are not, or are affected by, are not big theoretical explanation. They worry about concrete, no, they worry. They're affected by concrete images, data, and so on and so on. But are people aware? Because both sides exploit this to the end, like the state of Israel with all those burned bodies and so on. And of course, from Gaza, like what affected even me is, I learned, and I have friends even there in Gaza, who are absolutely not anti-Semitic, some of these international shitty UN forces, whatever. And they told me that it was through this news that children who are still there, not small, but like 8, 10 years, they carve into their arm their name deeply with a knife, so that if they are found dead, it will be possible to identify them, you know, the name. So such things affect people. Now, are you aware what this constant bombardment in the last weeks of the images of bombing Gaza and so on and so on? All my sympathy, of course, with Palestinians, but I worry also about anti-Semitism. Are you aware that this is, I cannot even imagine, as I wrote, what this will do for anti-Semitism. Did you read that news which terrified me in Dagestan, one of those shitty half-Muslim parts of Russian Federation? When a plane landed from Israel, local mob attacked the plane, and then passengers had to run around, hide themselves, and so on and so on. So I think that this strategy of how, especially I was affected, because I'm sorry, for the first time in my life, maybe, I'm totally anti-nationalist. I feel affected as a Slovene. Sorry, we were occupied by Germany in World War II. At least 20% of the population was killed and so on. And the same Germans who at that point occupied us and shout us will now shout at me again. Of all the people, they will teach me what is anti-Semitism and so on. So read, was it published here in Guardian? A very good text by, I'm not sure I will pronounce it correctly, Deborah Feldman. She is a German Jew, German citizen, but at the same time, I think she has double citizenship and Israeli citizenship and open to a dialogue with Palestinians. She says that after some roundtable, big with a German high politician, I'm not sure, I think it was Habeck, that the Green Party finance minister, asked him, what should she do? She told me, I'm sorry, I'm Jewish, but at the same time, I have good relations with Palestinians, blah, blah, blah. You know what was the answer private of this minister? I should give it to you in German. Those, it means people like her, das sind doch keine reinen Deutschen. Like you as being Jewish, you are not pure German, so it's not my problem. You know what's so horrible? She then investigated it. This said a total defender of Israel. The term rein Deutsch is strictly a Nazi term. If in today's Germany you want to say you are not fully, you would say keine richtige or echte German, of course, never you use the term because it has deserved in Germany, this racist, you never use the term, you never draw a distinction, rein Deutsch, purely German and not purely German. Another problem I have, and again, can I be clearer how totally I reject Hamas. But, no, it's not bad in the sense of they are not so bad. It's just bad in the sense that those liberals who now it's fashionable to sympathize with poor Palestinians. Oh my God, they're victims, children died, and so on and so on. So it's again typical Western hypocrisy. The third world other is good insofar as he, she, it, they suffer. They are good as victims. Oh, if they try to organize themselves and do something, they are terrorists, you know. It's victim or terrorist. Now, I agree that the way for it is not Hamas. If Hamas and Israeli hardliners will win, and it's quite possible, there will be not even maybe world war. I'm more of a pessimist, you know, because those bad guys, when they win, they always find a way to apparently attack each other, but really, this is called BRICS. That's why I am against BRICS. BRICS is, you know, this idea of outside the Western world, these new independent growing economies. This means you do your own crimes in peace, I do my own crimes in peace, let's tolerate each other. No? And they do something horrible here. They denounce these Western notions, which I'm sorry, I know they are hypocritical, but as such, they still have a value. For example, human rights, feminism, and so on and so on. Yes, I totally agree, their hypocrisy, we violate the rules, and so on. For example, one of the members of PLO, more moderate parliament, says, and I think this is a valid argument, that when Russians bombed electricity network in Ukraine, it was immediately denounced as a war crime. And the idea was you never should cut off electricity for civilians. When Israel did it in Gaza, cut off, it was a different standard. But still, hypocritical as it is necessary as a standard. Because if you just say human rights are Western imperialist tool, then what remains is nothing. It's just naked force. So second thing, why it struck me when I was attacked for mentioning context. Oh, it's incredible. One big article against me in German, I mean, I was for 1 week a star there, you know, the big daily Zeitungen, newspapers attacking me. One had the big title, I loved it. Hamas attack had kein context, has no context, as if the mentioning of context is already. I claim, no, not only it has context, but the shock of the Hamas context can only be explained precisely through its context. It's totally understandable. Why were Jews so shocked? Because the attack brought the memories of Holocaust and so on. Again, killing Jews just because they are Jews. And why are the Palestinians so shocked? Again, because it's repeated Nakba, the catastrophe. Even, people don't know this. This is such a brutal irony. The term Nakba is prohibited to use publicly in Israel. Except one of their ministers recently used it in an ironic way. They can do it. Oh, we will do, if necessary, a second Nakba in Gaza and so on. So let me give, you know, this is the only way to explain, and I even see the point. Yes, it was shocking, the Hamas attack in South Israel. Why? Much worse things happened in the 20th century, and they didn't have such a global echo. For example, if you ask me which are the candidates for the pure horror, remember this name, check it up, it's breathtaking. Shiro Ishii, Ishii. a Japanese doctor, specialist of diseases and how to cure them, these chemical diseases, who was, I think, compared to him, Mengele was a small country doctor. This Hiro Ishii ran in Manchuria during World War II, a mega military medical complex employing 2,000 doctors with tens of thousands of Chinese exposed to breathtaking experiments. Like every day they took out of you half a pint, more or less, half a liter of blood, and how long you will survive. They almost froze you to death. Then they put close to you a naked woman, beautiful, and like, will you die or will you be revitalized? Not to mention like taking out your, it's much more nightmarish things. And the victims were in tens of thousands. Like they were spreading plague and other, they were simply throwing bacteria on Chinese cities and then were then to check it up. Now we'll ask, okay, what happened to this guy? I like the world in which I live. This means other horror. Americans in 45-6 were so interested in his work that he got total amnesty on condition that he delivers the results of his studies. So everybody knew what he was doing, but he died in 62, I think, 19. He had a happy old age in some small Japanese village and so on and so on. When Eva Ilus attacks me for, like, why do I go immediately into theory? Where is this immediate shock and fear, sympathy with the victims? Well, this is also relative. Not relative in the sense it's not absolute evil, but our reaction is conditioned by context. For example, apart from Holocaust, concentration camps, one of the really horrible things, and I was told this by years ago by a grandfather of a friend of mine from Germany who was, remember this date, July 43 in Hamburg, the northern city. The Allies, in an operation named Operation Gomorrah, dropped so many bombs on Hamburg that they created the largest firestorm known. Tens of thousands of people died, 60% of the city's houses were destroyed, and it was so horrible because they used some chemicals which went on burning. The only way to stop it, to stop burning the fire, was to go under the water. But then you came up to grasp the air, it began burning again. So people were just on the edge of the river asking, SS was there doing some good job in a cynical way. They patrolled the rivers and then somebody just asked, please shoot me. They were killing them because it was, but what I'm saying is that people knew about this, but in a way that I even understand. Nonetheless, these were not, although the people of Hamburg, I was told, you know why we are so furious? That's the evil side of the British and Americans even, because they carefully selected the workers' suburbs to be destroyed, because they thought the most important thing is to destroy the morale of the working force. But there was a cynical idea beneath. When we will occupy Hamburg, let's keep the nice part of villas for us safe. We will need them. Destroy the workers' dwellings. And no, so what I'm saying is that not that I don't agree with, I'm not crazy with horror, Gaza attacks. I mean, the kibbutz in Israel near Gaza deserves our full compassion. But again, you can explain precisely this compassion only through historical memory. It's not immediate feeling. The Jews were so horrified because, again, it brought back the memories of of Holocaust, and to the other side, the memories of Nakba, and so on and so on. Now, as to, there is another sad lesson noted by, sorry, I do this not to get rid of you. Okay, around 1 hour. I'm against linear notion of time dialectically, you know, and so on. You know what's crucial here? We in the West, when there are terror attacks, it's usually, we have our rhythm of life, it goes on, and then boom. I was even here, when was this? Some 15 years ago, do you remember that attack when Livingston was still the mayor, even close to here? 2007. Yeah. I was even here, and I had to pay egotism. Yeah, I had a special memory because the same evening I had a flight. So I had to pay triple the taxi to take me because all London was. But what I'm saying is that that's the typical trauma for us. September 11, this a shock, and then we mourn, but life returns to normal. But what is so tragic, and I see an echo of this if you compare southern Israel, Hamas attack, and Gaza. What about all those third world people? But let's even forget about, but we shouldn't, Gaza. For example, the true nightmare, when the nightmare is not an exception, but becomes a way of life. For example, it really affected me. Some regions of maybe one of the nightmarish states today, the Democratic Republic of Congo. There are parts of the country where most of the men were killed in civil war. So you have women with children. And the women, to survive, have to go to walk to some store, whatever. And the path is controlled by some bandits. So it's part of the daily life. Like there are 10 women, today you go, then you, because they know you will be serially raped. But this is simply, can you imagine life like this? It's not an exception. Oh my God, I was raped. It's no, let's gather together. Let's see who will be raped today. No, that's the horror, you know, and we see a little bit of this again, unfortunately there. For Israelis, it was maybe 2 days or whatever, a shock. For Gaza, it's, you know, and then all this humanitarian bullshit, you know, oh, we sympathize there with children and so on and so on. I think, and I'm not an utopian here, that Israel, I'm not saying it shouldn't attack Hamas. It could have been done in a much more humanitarian, different way. Here, if this is not a moderate position, you know, taking more care of, for example, the most cynical point, you remember a couple of days, a week after the war, Israel gave first 24 hours for all from northern part to move south, which was theoretically, that they draw that line, which was theoretically impossible. Then, now I come to the last part, and then I will conclude, and okay, tomorrow we go into philosophy, into this, to avoid any misunderstanding, this horror of anti-Semitism, and how to explain what goes on today. I want to show you, this is, sorry, the last clip. It's something very ordinary. You find dozens like this. But you know, this is the daily life of on the West Bank. A group of Palestinian farmers harassed by a settler who just shouts at them, humiliates them, throws around their seeds, grain, and so on. And they can't do anything. Why? Because there are, I don't know, you will see policemen or army, Israeli, behind, who of course does nothing. You know? And this must be a horrible sense where the big other is not there, but not in this great emancipatory Lacanian way, but simply you have no legal force to rely on. Now imagine this to be your daily life. Let's go again quickly through this disgusting procedure. Okay, let's do the second one. Stop. Nothing so horrible, but it's depressing. Remember, this is the way of life. Daily life, it just drags on. What is this? Sabotage. My God, in a terrorist state, I would be a good minister of the interior. Yeah.
Yeah, sabotage.
مش عايزين تفكير مش عايزين وقت بدي لك الموضوع تفضل التصوير شو؟ شو؟ هذا حاجة قابل شو كم عربي مين قابل؟ مين قابل يعني يهودي كيف؟ مين قابل؟ مين قابل يا زاي؟ مين قابل؟ مين قابل؟ تعال أنا أمسك أنا لا تعال ريال مين قابل؟ وين قابل؟ مش عارف يهودي هذا ولد من الفلانيات ولد من شو؟ نريد أتكلم منه هذه كوكسينين قاعدة كوكسينين قاعدة كوكسينين اقبل بيهم ريال لا واش قابل؟ هذا بيصور الثاني ها خليه قبل ما غايب كمان شوية زين لما صار كما عربي كوكسينين يومي كفوف وش الفقدانين تكبري ما تكبر شو من هذا كما تكبري شو من هذا شيء ما يعرف شيء
ركبوا عندك تراكتور يا ولاد يا ولاد
اغاني صغير اغاني صغير اغاني صغير فين من اين الفيديو شريت تكون اغاني صغير فين هاي الزبال
אומר לו תפתח לי דרך, אני הולך הביתה ואף אחד לא מפעיל את התפקיד שלו. עוד הוא רודף אחריו! מה זה סברת? אני מצלם, מה יש לך? זהו, הטרקטור לא צריך ללכת הביתה, מה אתה יודע? הנה הצבא, משטרה, מנהל אזרחי ואין שום תפקיד מפעיל פה. הנה, הולך הביתה הטרקטור, זהו. חסם לו דרך, עושים מסתכלים. חוסם לו דרך בטרקטור, לא ראית?
אבל תסתכל מה עושים, אח שלי.
יש תיאום, נכון? לך תחזיר את הטרקטור עכשיו, בתפקיד שלך בבקשה. הנה, חזר! מה, אתה רוצה שעכשיו יגש תלונה נגד? הנה, תסתכל, הנה.
Okay. No, it's okay.
That's all right.
I mean, sorry. You see, it's nothing horrible, but there are much worse things, killings and so on. But imagine this as a daily life. What's my point here? Now I will make a conclusion which will offend, I hope, both sides. People are talking today about about leftist anti-Semitism, no? identifying imperialism with Israel and so on and so on. Yes, we should be critical towards Israel, but at the same time, totally against anti-Semitism. Why? I think precise thesis that anti-Semitism, there cannot be anti-Semitic left. If there is, it's a iron proof. It's a proof that the left, there is something wrong with this left. Take the example of, for example, Hugo Chavez. I remember 20 years ago when things began to get wrong in Venezuela, he made a couple of anti-Semitic statements, like Jew, money, blah, blah, all that. And you know who of all guys corrected him, forced him to apologize? I was very critical of him, Fidel Castro. He wrote him a public letter saying, no, Jews suffered, don't do this, and so on and so on. So my idea is that precisely, yes, there is here and there anti-Semitism on the left, but it's always, by definition, a symptom that there is something wrong with this left. Let's take my supreme example, Soviet Union. They claim communism was always anti-Semitic. Sorry, are they crazy? Look at Lenin's Politburo, the guys who really forget about democracy, run things. More than half of them were Jews, with Trotsky on the top. Look, now it's a nice data for you to provoke you. I read a book about the early era of Cheka. Cheka was the original KGB. You know what was the national percentage of different ethnic groups, in Cheka? Over 20% Jews, a little bit less than 20% Litva, Latvia, Estonia, Baltic countries, and in all outnumber around 15% of Russians. That's why all the first generation white counter-revolution, they were almost ferociously anti-Semitic, always depicting Trotsky as devil and so on. So, and with Stalin, it all changed. You know, it's precisely when, already in the late 20s, the revolution, I'm not saying it didn't go wrong openly, but this big Stalinist change where everything changed at the level of superstructure, but not only there, like homosexuality was prohibited in the 20s, it wasn't a problem. Motherhood was rediscovered. Divorce was made much more difficult. In late 20s, if you got more than 3-4 children, you got this medal, you know, hero of mother, well, some bullshit medal, and so on. And exactly at that point, of course, with the code word, it wasn't called anti-Semitism, it was called cosmopolitanism, like a deviation. So against this background, tomorrow I will go into precisely this stuff about all the paradoxes of more philosophy of anti-Semitism and how this affects today's Judaism. Don't be afraid. My point will not be, as people claim who accuse me of being anti-Semitic, my point will not be that Jews are today's Nazis, but that in a strange way, you remember some Jewish friends gave me this idea of how the whole Jewish emancipatory legacy, and I say this openly, there would have been in Europe no enlightenment without Jews, precisely as stateless Jews. Remember Heydrich, who said, assimilation is Jews bad, Zion is Jews good. And it's along these lines that Heidegger, in the most horrible way imaginable, in his black notebooks published some 10 years ago, justifies Holocaust. My God, I love this. Yes, when I say I love this, it means it's unimaginable horror. Because he interprets Holocaust as a self-destruction of the Jews. Jews got what they deserve. Why? Because Jews embody this general, without roots in a blood and soil, general stance of exploiting nature, manipulating others, and simply in Holocaust, they got their own message back. They got what they really wanted. It's a nightmare, but enough of this tomorrow. I'm sorry it was not enough philosophy. Be sure that you will get it tomorrow. So now I will pretend that we live in a democracy and please.
The bit you hate, the questions.
I hate the questions, although as I already once said here, I think, wouldn't it be nice to have this type of debate that one of you stands up and improvise on something, and then my task is to invent the question to which his question was an answer, you know. Or my temptation, as I already used this joke here, is to give you this kind of pseudo-Buddhist answer. You know, you ask me a complex question, my answer is something like clap with one hand or think about nothing or some bullshit like that. Please.
Right, thank you. Let's...
No.
Okay.
No, don't even bother applauding, because tomorrow I will try to indicate where maybe there is a solution, but I really think we live in a shitty time. I don't see, you know, at the other, 3 weeks ago at that How To Academy, a young guy asked me a very good question. Cynical, brutal, but I like this. Maybe you find it on YouTube. He asked me, your view was dark, but it's easy for you, I love this, to say, because you are an old guy, in any case, you will drop that soon. But look at the people, they're mostly in their 20s. What should be the message to them? Aren't you obliged to give them some hope? And then I think, but I was cut short, what I was able to say was a good point. I simply asked the guy, is your reproach epistemological or ontological? By this, I mean, sorry, it's not so complex. Do you mean my diagnosis is correct? Just not to make people too desperate, invent some happy ending, you know. But so you agree with my diagnosis? You are just saying I should be more considerate? Or are you saying there really is a hope? The situation is not so dark. In that case, please tell me, where do you see the hope? And of course, I claim that the moderator, not you, the guy there, was his agent, because that's your question, that's a good point to conclude, you know. So, sorry, please.
Right, before Slavoj asks himself another question, but
isn't this the essence of enlightenment, that you ask yourself questions?
Indicate clearly, let's take you.
Yes, I'm thinking about language.
Oh, we've got a roving mic, so just so everyone else can hear, do speak into the mic.
First of all, that guy was really an asshole. You didn't deserve that day.
Sorry, you were the guy who asked me that.
Oh, no.
No, I thought, because it's not a racist joke. I have a bad eyes now, and maybe you were the same guy, I don't know.
It was not me, but he was an asshole. I was going to ask you about language, right?
In what sense? Be precise.
Yes, in this last video, it seems like they can understand each other, the Israeli and the Palestinian.
I don't know. Do you know? What language were they speaking?
I don't know.
Probably Hebrew. Because I understand that Palestinians speak Hebrew. I don't think that many do speak whatever the Palestinians speak.
It's kind of like the opposite of Habermasian. Like, we can communicate because of language and we can come to reason together. This is like he can bully the Palestinian guy because he can understand him, right?
Yeah.
If they were not understandable to one another, you actually couldn't get the bullying because it wouldn't make sense to the other guy, right? Like,
that's a very nice point. Yes.
Bully you in Turkish, it's not going to mean anything to you.
You know what? But you know what's my answer to you here? Sorry, did you? Again, I'm interrupting you. I'm really evil. Please finish the question.
Yes. No. I mean, the question is, what's the role of language?
I am here Hegelian. We think in language irreducibly, but there is of course, Hegel was aware of it, an ideology inscribed into every language. The way you relate to sexes, to environment, to everything. And by ideology, I don't mean here some dark mega plot. I mean simply at the everyday level. For example, I enjoyed a conversation 40 years ago with a Japanese guy who told me how difficult it is, and correct me if there are some Japanese here, if I got something wrong, you know Freud's notion of Verneinung. You didn't, this wasn't my mother, which means for sure it was my mother, all that stuff. And he said that in Japanese, this is difficult to act because they have, according to different stuff, does the lower class guy address a higher, and so on. You have some almost 20 ways to say no. So, you know, it complicates things. And even, I love them, not because I'm a Western racist, but to see problems like this is why in India, the untouchables, the lower caste, whom I met, we immediately fell in love, but not because of this. They loved English because they, not because they were pro-imperialists, but they said in English, you is you, and it's more egalitarian, while in their own languages in India, the hierarchy is much more written into the texture. You address people at different levels in different ways. So what I'm saying is that that's the problem of language. That I'm not saying language is a homogeneous ideological entity. No, language is self-contradictory because returning to Habermas, yes, I'm against Habermas because unfortunately, he also now fell into this trap. Habermas and two of his younger pupils published something which a little bit in a paranoia, I think was also meant as an attack against me. Basically, they say, yeah, Israel might be doing something wrong in Gaza, but nonetheless, the ultra trauma was this Holocaust, absolute solidarity with Israel. And but here, where I would agree with Habermas is that there is a certain, what Habermasians would have called normativity involved in language. So I'm not saying directly that language is an instrument of oppression, but it's self-antagonistic. It has a certain equality of communication. Like when I address you, I presuppose we share the same space. But at the same time, this formal equality is blurred by ideological biases and so on, which is why, as Hegel put it wonderfully, we think in language, but a true dialectician learns to think in language against the language. That's why Hegel, surprisingly, hated this idea of pure neutral formal language. That's why Hegel relied so much on workplace, you know, these double meanings like Aufhebung, you know. In German, it means sublation in the sense of overcoming, it means faithful to it, and it means destroying. So this is Hegel's idea of a speculative sentence. You read a sentence, it's meaningless, you don't get it, you had to read it again to get the double meaning and so on. But where I agree, if I got your point, I hope you agree, is that I never believe in this is too fascist for me, idea that languages are irreducible obstacles. Like, let's say you are from South America, I'm from China. How do we know that with money, state power, we mean the same thing? No, I think that, but not in the Habermasian sense of some normativity that it is already there, but with hard work, I will do a very pathetic, simple statement. With hard work, we can always communicate. That I think that this easy escape into, oh, how do I know that you mean the same thing? There is something false in it. You know why? Because it presupposes that languages are in themselves autonomous entities. They are not. They are self-contradictory. They include references to other languages and so on, which is why what I like most is when, and that's Adorno, you are an Adornian, you were years ago, had this nice point in defense of these foreign words, you know, against how they are the most precious part of the, and he gives a nice example of how a foreign word that we use, part of our language, Italian origin, whatever, what you lose if you simply translate it into English or German. Our hope is precisely the inconsistency, the inner tensions of language. So I agree with, I think that I don't agree with this simplistic Habermasian notion. You know what? Why not? Because, oh my God, I'm a total idiot, which means I really even read intelligent cognitivists who are now doing some very interesting stuff about language, and they are the best anti-Habermasians, I think, because they have, I think, conclusively proven in a very slightly primitive way, origins of language and so on, that language was basically made to lie, to either sexually seduce or trick the other into submission, so that what Habermas reads as normativity, language has this norm that you don't like, be truthful. No, it's an appearance. It's a language is made to fake to be truthful. The basic dimension of language is lying, which is why, again, you have to think in language against language. On the and now, just to conclude, I will not get lost, although I already was. What I would answer you is you would agree that, so not only because of this inconsistency of languages, not only is it that we can understand each other, but often coming from outside, you can maybe notice inconsistencies in my culture better than I do myself, who is in my culture. And my eternal example, I probably even used it here, is Hollywood. Precisely the big wave in the 30s, 40s of those movies which were pretty critical of American ideology. They were mostly done by German immigrants and so on and so on. Precisely their distance from American way of life enabled them to see antagonisms there. For example, some Fritz Lang movies and so on. So I hope.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take you.
Thank you. To be honest, I have too many questions written down here about Zizek. I'm gonna like do some propaganda and all.
For whom?
For you. I'm gonna
yeah, for me.
Yeah, combine them into one, you know, but they're like multiple questions in hand.
Okay.
First, I wanna say that we're neighbors, European. You know, I come from Austria. We border the thing, so we know each other.
Really?
Yeah.
How do we know each other? No. What I mean is, you know, I remember when Slovenia became independent,
yeah.
Otto von Habsburg, the last descendant, says, in typical Austrian way, yeah. We Slovenes are just Austrians who speak another language. Yeah. That we are. Yeah. I hope you meant this. Yeah, sorry. Correct. But you know what is Austria? More Nazi than Germany itself. You know? I mean it.
I don't claim Austria, by the way.
Sorry, I will stop interrupting.
I don't claim Austria, so we're clear. I'm a Pan-Africanist. Anyway, which leads me to my questions. Because I know back in the day you engaged with Fanon in some capacity in your work. I just want to ask you how much you've engaged with Black philosophy in general, with people in the Black radical tradition, like such as Fred Moulton, Calvin Alvarin, or Frank P. Alderson, since they are currently continuing the question of nothing, which kind of is related to your work in terms of going into the paradoxes of being and whatnot, ontologically speaking. So I wonder how much you've come across their work.
Okay, very honestly, I am sick and tired of lying. I must admit, sorry, that I don't know a lot about it. But what I can say only is that, to go particular to particular names in my new book on Christian atheism, which will appear in a couple of months, which will be hated by Christians and by atheists. I go very deeply into, because I don't think it's simply pessimistic. There is a very deep philosophical insight. Okay, that's not Africa, that's more Black Americans. I hate the term Afro-Americans, like, you know, like Afro-Americans, what does it mean? Why are then we not called European Americans, you know? But, you know, Afro-pessimists. There is, I think, they are not simply just pessimists. There is such a deep insight in them, in the sense that precisely there you have nothing embodied, this zero level of subjectivity, which is more radical than all the European bullshit on subjectivity. I think that today, to save the emancipatory content of Cartesianism, in this sense of pure thought, African pessimists are close to it. And I always thought, again, although I am spontaneously a racist in the sense of let's insult everybody, but I think who wrote Toni Morrison, Beloved? My God, she is a nice lady. I met her once at Princeton. She's not some kind of a politically correct bitch. I immediately went into dirty talk with her. She's a wonder. And I think that her Beloved is the, underlined 3 times, lesson on feminine subjectivity, on how through this radical loss, a specific type of feminine subjectivity emerges and so on. So you see my point, not to mention Fanon. Fanon is absolute for me. Not so much a demon of the earth, but already he's, what is mask? White masks, blah, blah, blah. It's incredible. You know what he sees clearly there? That we shouldn't fall into this opposition of either some mysterious African origins, which are more authentic, or white emancipatory thought, how fake this opposition is. And you know where I experienced this? I'm old enough, you're probably not. I remember apartheid times, how Mandela, I had problems with him, but at least the great thing was he never played the card of some more authentic black experience. You know who played this card? Buthelezi, who was fully supported by apartheid regime. Buthelez's message was, we blacks want our own specific identity. And of course, the white says, yes, that's what apartheid means. And so on. Let's stick to it. Again, maybe you know this story. I remember in the 70s, 80s, I got here in London, I know where. Isn't it on Trafalgar Square or there, South African embassy? Yeah. They were distributing there some propaganda for free. I took a booklet, of course, for apartheid. And you know what was their argument? Pure multiculturalism, of course, that if we just introduce democracy in South Africa, it means what will happen with all those, who are those lower Hottentot, Bushman or whatever, that all this wealth of black cultures different will disappear and so on and so on. So I always like to emphasize this. There is a multiculturalism which is the best tool of imperialism. It's not true that colonial imperialism wants the black to become like us. No. They want the blacks to be even more what they are. This is why, as I learned from friends in India, just before the British colonization of India, India was already, traditional ideology was disappearing. Gradually, nobody took it seriously. In the 19th century, the British colonizers, in a whole campaign, organized reprinting old Hindu classics because they got it. No. Hindu guys should stay there in their own culture. They wanted to keep them there. This is why one of the most disgusting British colonial topics was even the poorest Indian farmer has more deep spiritual wisdom than we Europeans with, oh my God. I mean, it's pure nightmare. What Fanon saw clearly, also socially, with his contacts with Sartre and so on, that there is no opposition here. If you drop these cliches, you can clearly see how, if you just remain faithful to emancipatory legacy, European, and how easy it is to collaborate to mutual benefit, not just pragmatic collaboration, but engage in the same project with oppressed blacks and oppressed whites. That's why my formula of universalism is not what I ironically call the UNESCO universalism. All this book, how different this culture is, how beautiful that culture is. No, all cultures are shit. So the only universalism is the oppressed of this culture, let's collaborate with the oppressed of another culture. That's the only universalism, not this celebrating what spiritual depth here, there, and so on and so on. I know I didn't answer your question, but you see how I proceed. But you see my point. I like to look at these concrete references, Toni Morrison or Afro-pessimists or Fanon. This is for me something I'm almost tempted to say absolute. I think that my problem is, again, I admit in this sense, under quotation marks, I am Eurocentrist, how to save the emancipatory legacy of modern Europe. I claim only you Africans and others can do it. We are too corrupted, we cannot do it. If we try to do it, we end up like those German controller. You know how they are even called in Germany? It's a nightmare, the guy who shouted at me. Anti-Semitic commissar. Each state in Germany has now a guy who is responsible to detect anti-Semitism. It's like their own version of... it's Gestapo in another form, yes. Yes, it's terrifying because I saw already how they, you know, for example, now they debate from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free. Now this is proclaimed, more or less, it will be officially prohibited, anti-Semitic. But sorry, from my Jewish friends, I know this was originally meant not throw the Jews into the sea. This originally was meant a one-state argument. Let's all Jews and Arabs live there in one state. Originally, this is not. Although, again, you know what? Jewish greatness for me. I know the writer who now is so, but he did criticize the state of Israel. Now also David Grossman. I spoke with him, maybe you know the story, some 15 years ago, 20, when he told me that when he was young, this is Judaism at its purest, in good sense. He was heard Arab propaganda, you will be thrown into the sea. We will. And you know what was his reaction? My God, I don't know how to swim in the sea. And then he took, he went to training for swimming and so on. That's Kafka. This is Kafka. This is the spirit. You know, this is the spirit. So I'm just waiting. I would like so much to know about Africa. For example, the miracle of this cheaply made digital movies in Ghana and around. Oh, yeah. Isn't there a whole cinema? So, because you know we... Nollywood. Sorry? Nollywood? Or... Nollywood, yes. I don't like Bollywood. That's Nollywood. Yeah. You so here, because you know what's a good thing nonetheless about European post-modernity is that it's very easy for third world countries to bypass ordinary line of progress and catch, for example, you have those people, for us Europeans, primitive Ghana, although Ghana is a beautiful country, but all that, and then, my God, all of a sudden, through iPhones and so on, you can jump all this boring technological development, you can immediately connect to where we are today. That's what I find a progressive element in this postmodern technology that those who were excluded, don't have to go through the all stupid stages of us European. You can directly jump. Sorry, I talk too much. Please.
Good things though.
Yeah.
I wanna read a quote to you from Calvin and Rowan. He wrote in Ontological Terror, which is permanent to your work, which is that quote: "We are still on the path to developing a phenomenology of Black spirit." So I wish to continue that work, and you've inspired it. It's awesome.
Great, thanks.
Yes,
thanks very much.
Was the Fanta good though?
Yeah.
Was the Fanta good?
The Fanta's always the same, isn't it?
It's the same, but it's good because of its context, which I described.
Okay.
But listen, I know you are leftist, but there are also right-wingers here too.
Okay, all right.
Okay, but there was a lady there. We will not forget her.
We'll go to you after.
That's funny you would call me that. I was about to mention some things about Germany.
Bitte.
Yeah.
Are you German?
I lived in Germany for 13 years.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Anyway, you said it first, like the one version to do this questions is I say something and then you say something and we have this autistic monologue, dialogue. So what I wanted to say is that the phenomena you said about Germany, I have some opinions on that.
Please.
I think that Germany is so extreme in supporting Israel because of multiple reasons. One, Israel legitimizes the existence of a German state. If Israel as this, how they market themselves as this Jewish state, didn't get like the kind of reparation from what the Jewish people experienced in Germany, then the German state would have no justification whatsoever to exist. And on the other side, Israel needs some kind of predatory narrative, predatory history to exist and depict itself as a Jewish state, when it isn't a purely Jewish state, but that's the rhetoric to justify what they are doing right now. And I feel like talking about this in Germany creates this, I like to call it like a social panopticon. There is this general alienation from the guild. I mean, there have been studies done by the Arosen archive, the biggest archive about World War II, whatever. There have been made studies and they found that over 70% of Germans think their own ancestors, personal grandparents, they were either neutral or freedom fighters. How does that work? I can't do the math.
No, I know. Sorry to interrupt you. I found this totally understandable because in Slovenia there were very little dissidents, but after 1990, almost everybody was a dissident 10 years ago. So it's the same. Please go on. Sorry.
And what you said, like outside they say something extreme, inside they say something else. There's the social panopticon, like are you the Nazi? Are you the neo-Nazi? Because we can't see statistically a rise, but no one speaks out openly, except for the left, and that's the funny part. The Zaha Wagenknecht, like this big speaker of the Linke, she went outside and said, "Oh, the anti-Semitism problem in Germany stems from imported anti-Semitism from Arabs."
She said this. I like her in a horrible way even more now. No, because you know what happened to her, Zara Wagenknecht, the mistress of Oscar Lafontaine, no? To give a concrete social analysis of who was, that's her moment of truth. You remember a couple of months ago, she gave a speech, I think in Dresden or Leipzig, preaching this anti-immigrant blah, blah. And in the first row of the public, there was a big name of Alternative für Deutschland, right wing, who shouted at her, "Kommen Sie zu uns, come to us, you are one of us." And this is an incredible problem, but you see, it's so well what you said, this game that is played now, yes, that's the logical conclusion. It's that, I made a well-known joke on where is the Balkan, For us in Slovenia, it's Croatia. For Croatia, it's Serbia, Orthodox. For Serbia, Balkan is always down there. Maybe it will become the same with anti-Semitism. No, it's not us, We were a little bit, and that's the most consequent here is Heidegger about this tomorrow. where he says anti-Semitism, which means killing the Jews, it's the Jews themselves who want it. And we Germans were just manipulated by them to do it. It's quite breathtaking, you know. But what really, yes, it's always anti-Semitism. And you know what fascinates me? It's not just anti-Semitism. I'm now I hope forgot it all, an old joke, but it's not a joke, it's very sad. My own mother, the most sacred, you know. I discovered her anti-Semitism, maybe you know the story, 40, 50 years ago. She had an old Jewish lady, my mother was also already old, as a friend, and I don't know who was returning to whom some money, and then this Jewish lady left, and my mother told me, you know, she's this Jewish lady, my best friend, but did you notice in what strangely intense way she was counting the money? I got her. She may appear normal as one of us, but you know, I wrote of this, probably most of you don't know it, years ago, when I said it's the same as in these good old science fiction movies about invasion of aliens. They look like us, just in some of the movies they have too much skin within this. They have a strange glimpse in their eyes, whatever. Just you have to know the detail and you see they are radically others, which is why for Germans it was such a problem which is why the Nazis were so obsessed with how to identify the Jews, you know, but the Nazis had the same problem with Aryans, you know. Hitler was well aware that Germans are not really, name me one big Nazi politician who look like an Aryan should look. Blonde, high, maybe half Ribbentrop, maybe, but not really. Look, was Hitler a beautiful Aryan? Be serious. Was Goering, fat guy? Be serious. Was, sorry? Goebbels, a small, politically incorrect, crippled guy, and so on. That's why they loved Norwegians. It was clear, the myth was that Norwegians are more Aryans than we are. And that's where one should begin by undermining racism, not by saying you live in illusions, that you are not privileged race, but to show how secretly you don't even believe in your own racism. you transpose it onto another, you know. So, sorry, but yes, I agree with you, and it worries me very much because the wager of Sarah Wagenknecht is, of course, to get the vote from the far right, you know, anti-immigrant, but I didn't know, I will look for it, what you told me, this anti-Semitic, from where? It's a good theory, maybe, because do you know, Alain Badiou, when we were still friends, told me this, that it's only in the 20s that anti-Semitism really exploded in Germany. If you were to ask somebody around 1900 or 1910, if you were to tell him, listen, there will be a big anti-Semitic fascist state in Europe, which will it be? The answer would have been France. Not only because of Dreyfus, France was much stronger in its anti-Semitism at that period, you know. So again, maybe the German should claim it's really the French who are guilty, no? And so on. It's always nice to see racists to play these games. But do you agree or not? I am afraid of people like Wagenknecht because up to a point, very limited, I agree with her critique of the standard, let's just open our borders, immigrants. No, it's not so simple. If Europe goes on like this is what I'm afraid. You will get what we have now in Italy, in Sweden, all these new right-wingers, no? And at the end, we live in a wonderful time. I have a new ideal figure today. This means pure horror. You know, I mentioned it before the talk, you know that, how do you pronounce it, Milei, or what, the new Argentinian president, you know. My God, I'm sorry to say, the world is moving towards, let's call it, direct madness, in the sense that It's falling apart. And you know what's my solution here? You will not agree. It's no longer the time, it's an old point by me that I repeat, it's no longer the time to play this game of, you know, right-wing government is for establishment, decency, we should be alternative, obscenity. Sorry, new right-wing populists took this over very successfully. At the point that I always repeat, look, two contrasts of the American politics, Trump and Bernie Sanders. If there ever was a postmodern politician in this usual sense of making fun of himself, obscenities and so on, Trump is a pure cynical postmodernist. While if there ever was a politician who stands for, and I'm consciously using this term, silent moral majority, ordinary decency and so on, it's Bernie Sanders. We give too much to the right if we allow them to occupy this, let's call it naively, neutral moral ground of decency. No, they are the decadent nihilists today, not we. So my idea is totally crazy here, but it's not crazy because Bernie is doing it. Bernie, I spoke not with him, but because he is not my type. I learned with a guy who made an interview with him, a friend of mine, I will not take his name. He told me he had a meeting here in the London pub a couple of months ago with Bernie Sanders, and he thought, this friend of mine, that my approach, as he put it, Zizekian, will work, and began with some dirty jokes. No, not for Bernie. Bernie said, sorry, don't have time for this, ask the real question. So he's not my type. But nonetheless, what I want to say is that he provided the formula where years ago he said to Democrats, stop with this worry of middle. Who will get the middle ground politicians? You know, we shouldn't move too much to the left. No, Trump knew this. The more he went to the extreme, the more votes he had. So Bernie said, our target should be those impoverished white people who otherwise would have voted for Trump. They're not these famous middle ground liberals who oscillate or whatever, no? And this is the big problem today. I'm sorry, I talked too much.
Okay,
there was this lady,
yeah,
yes.
Let's have you. If we've got the mic, just the mic come.
Thank you. Just for context, I'm going to say, but this is relevant to the question, is that, so I was raised here and in the Arab world, and in the Arab world, let's say the middle class educated, which is a horrible term, we are not raised with anti-Semitic views. This is a misconception in the West. So I feel...
I tend to agree, yeah.
Yeah, anti-Semitism, and I think your concern is a Western one, even though, of course, any level of people that you put under the poverty line are going to have religious extremism. So of course you're going to see it. So when
I'm sorry if I gave this impression.
No,
I agree.
Course, So
I also noticed, sorry to interrupt, but that I had close contact to some guys who were even stupid enough afterwards to publish 2 books of mine in Egypt, and they told me the same, that in that Arab Spring, you know, there was practically no anti-Semitism there. It was absolutely not.
It's not, even after the 2003 invasion of Iraq, and now, you know, Christians are living very badly in the Middle East or in the Arab world. This is what's also not true before then. So,
but sorry to interrupt you, just a question along your line. But isn't nonetheless this partially true in Iraq itself? In the sense that the Iraqi invasion, US invasion, was to bring, so they said, to diminish the influence of Iran and to bring freedom to women and Christians. The result is that now Iran is stronger than ever in Iraq. Women are more lower position, because whatever you say about Saddam, no love for him, he was relatively secular. This and half of the Christians left. No, that's what usually United States do, like invasion of Libya. Again, there will be a democratic Libya. No, now I'm praying, what if somebody like Gaddafi were to return? Sorry to interrupt you, please go on.
We feel the same way because, I mean, I grew up on a Christian street in Baghdad, but my family is Muslim. It was a taboo to even discuss religion, especially not Jewish. don't call them Jews. Or so when you hear the Gazans who are suffering, let's say they're saying Jewish, they mean the Israelis. So my question is, I find that in the West, it's easy to criticize the British Empire, let's say, as maybe like a primitive old age institution, and we will support any nation that their ambition is to escape or to exit the British Empire. But as Arabs, we see Israel, I'm sorry if this offends anyone, it's just how we're raised. We see Israel as a colonial state. And especially after this conflict, the most recent one, I find that I'm not allowed to speak as an Arab and to say, do we have the right to our own land, especially because a lot of Israelis in power say that actually in the Bible, let's say, and I know you said this is a new narrative, in the Bible we actually have claim to parts of Egypt and Iraq. So for the Arab world,
Jews or
Israeli.
Israeli,
Yes, yeah. So for the Arab world, it's not a Jewish issue, it's more an issue of
colonization.
Back to the British and the French, so Sykes-Picot. And we feel that this conversation is not allowed to happen because of, the veil of not the veil, but the problem of anti-Semitism in the West. So I just wanted your...
No. I'm sorry, we don't have more times to go into this, but I deeply agree, if I got it correctly, with your tendency. You know what's the original problem? And that's, I mean it seriously, the tragedy of the Jews. In Europe, we burned them, Holocaust, and so on. And then the very support for Israel was part of European racism. Okay, there is even truth about, I read in some documentary that, it's not my favorite person, King Faisal, already in 1946, when the state of Israel was in the air, said to Truman, was at that point president, you did something horrible to Jews. But why do you want to atone for it with land which is up to some point? There was European hypocrisy in it. On the other hand, I think, but it's out of the question now. Nonetheless, I agree here with Edward Said, who said, why this obsession with whose land is it? My answer to the Jews is, whenever they say Torah or whatever, some bullshit, Old Testament, it says clearly it's our land. What I say is, then they immediately regret that they said this, is, I read the Bible. You know what it says there? You know the story. Moses dies, Joshua, and God tells him, go down, kill all of them. Nazareth or kill all of them, women, children, goats, sheep, whatever, And then the most obscene thing that is happening now, it's terrible, is that there are some Bible specialists who try to prove, based on some very suspicious data, like that they discovered some graves where children were burned alive and so on, that God was right. Who were the people? Who were the people in the valley that were ordered? Joshua and the Jews were ordered by God, kill them all. Right? Yeah. The rumor, the idea is now, what if they really were so decadent that they deserved it? I find this so horrible, like the use of, and typically, when I mention this to the Jew, my friends, many of them say, oh, it's anti-Semitism. And I always challenge them, okay, it's anti-Semitism, give me a better explanation. And then I get vague answers that, so it was done in that era. Yes, but then don't refer to this as your land. So it was done, I know, till 20th century even, things were done like that. I mean, we Slavs, we're a primitive tribe there in today's Ukraine, Russia, 1,500 years ago. And because of some, now it's theory, ecological changes brought there, we pushed to the West. And this is the story Russians don't want to hear. Do you know where the term Russian comes from? From Scandinavian invaders. Even the name is not Russian. their first kings were Rurik dynasty, which were again Scandinavians, although Putin now turned this around, you know, and claim that's why we have the right to Sweden, because and so on. But what I want to say is that, you see, my point is that, like, I have almost a Goebbels reaction when somebody mentions some secret old texts to justify today's position. I, like Goebbels, I grab for my gun. This shouldn't count as anything. I'm just a realist here. Yes, of course, it was sorry, I'm not personalizing it, Arab land, more than Jews were there. And also we shouldn't forget that.
Had Arab Jews as well.
Sorry?
There's Arab Jews.
Absolutely, not only this, but that we should also not forget that the origin of the decay of Jews in that land is Europe. It's ancient Rome after the rebellion of 070, you know, when they threw them out. And I know very well the story, which is, you know, it's wonderful to read Western, official, not some ISIS propaganda, history of crusades, where Saladin, how do you pronounce it correctly? Salah al-Din, I will not go into that. You know that first, when Crusaders in Second Crusade, or when, I forgot when, occupied Jerusalem, Arabs or whatever they were, not Jews, were allowed to stay as servants, not Jews. Jews were thrown out. So that when Saladin reoccupied Jerusalem, one of his first edicts was, it's to the Jews, it's safe to you now to return to Jerusalem. Not only this, there are sources which say that, and this is what some Jews don't like to hear today, that there were two groups of Jewish soldiers in Saladin's army, bringing it back. So, you know, history is so different. Just don't give me this bullshit of it was forever. Nothing was forever. The situation was so different. But you know what worries me here? To conclude, then I will have to stop before I collapse. Tomorrow we can go on. That what I find so tragic is that countries outside Europe are now assuming the worst part of European legacy, which is a strong ethnic nation state. Isn't this China, what is doing now? That's why now there is more pressure on Tibet, Uyghurs, and so on. They really want to become a strong nation state. And this is a catastrophe because the ancient Chinese empire, destroyed by the British in the Opium War, and was much more multicultural. It didn't have this totalizing intention. It's the same with Modi in India. He even wants Iraq to change the name into Bharat or what, no? Like the idea is, again, purely Hindu. It's the same with Erdogan in Turkey, ethnic state. So isn't this tragic? Precisely the part of European legacy, which today, when we are in a global crisis, when only global cooperation can save us, which is the worst part of European legacy, is given a new lease on life in this third world countries, you know. And I wonder, so said we don't come back. So, you know, my perverse taste that I always like to defend the bad guys, you know. So would you agree or not? Okay, you are too young for this, of course, but that I know Saddam was a horror, but what I found it strange here, the West was cheating, is that the West secretly supported him in his attack on Iran, playing a subtle game. They condemned Saddam when he used poisonous gases against Kurds, but not when he uses them against Iranians. This was a pure attack to use the confusion of Khomeini revolution and to grab land there. This is why it's very interesting. I followed the trial against Saddam. Iran said, sorry, we also have, can you make us part of the prosecution? Millions of people around died. They said, no, this is just Iraq and so on. So the war in the big trial against Saddam, his worst crime in numbers was excluded. No, and I know what you said. I don't know about Iraq, but I know about Egypt. How I know people from there. If there is a country where, at least till now, who knows what shit there will be now, there was no anti-Semitism, practical no, it's Egypt, frankly. It's Egypt. They are wonderful people, and I will tell you how I know it. I was with Fred Jameson in Duke University, and there was a small group, we had a seminar, and there was a guy from Egypt. And in my utterly despicable bad joke, one said, oh my God, I lost my wallet. Did anybody see it? I couldn't resist it. I pointed, that guy said, aren't you Egypt? Small thieves, check him and so on. We became the best friends with that guy, and this became a running gag joke. But you know why I admire this situation? Because it was absolutely clear to everybody, although it was the worst racist cliche, that it didn't work like that. You know, like I remember a week later, the same class, somebody says, I missed my umbrella. Did anybody see? We all looked at that Egyptian guy. So did you take it? This is how you win over racism, by simply making it not functional, you know. Sorry, I talked too much. Can we maybe, before I collect?
Yeah. So thank you.
No, thank you very much. And tomorrow we see you again, no?
Yeah, hope to see lots of you tomorrow. So thank you, and thanks, Slavoj.
No, I'm grateful to you to have the patience to sustain my bad taste jokes. But don't you agree? There is no taste outside bad taste. I think Adorno would have loved it.
Could you